Okay, good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, so I'll call the meeting to order. I am going to read this official notice about recording. This meeting is being recorded and broadcast on Channel 18 in accordance with Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20. The committee must inquire whether anyone is taping this meeting and to please make their presence known. I see nobody from the public here and just us checking, so I think we'll proceed. So the last meeting, our topics for discussion today, the last meeting we reviewed the document and staff had a lot of work to do to incorporate our suggestions into a red line version, which is available for comment today. So we're going to go through that today. And hopefully at the end of our discussion today, we will recommend that this document be released to the full committee and to the public, basically for them, so that they can prepare comments for our meeting, which I believe is June 22nd.
That is correct. Yep. So our
right?
next
Okay.
meeting is next Thursday, June 22nd, and that's at 5:30 p.m. in person within our town hall hearing room.
Exactly. So everybody will have the same information at the same time. And so why don't we start doing that?
Sounds
Point of
great. Thank
order.
you.
Point of order, roll
Yeah.
call.
Roll call.
We need to do a roll call.
We do for opening the meeting?
I think so.
I would recommend so. Thank you.
Okay. Roll call.
Fran Parks,
Felicia Penn. And Megan Mort, the third member of our committee, is absent this morning due to a conflict with work.
Okay.
All
Well, first
present
and
accounted for, and we have a quorum.
thank you, Felicia. First and foremost, as always, appreciate everyone's time to meet and to review this document. The red line that I sent out last night is available with the meeting materials for this meeting this morning online. And so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to bring up the Word document so that way we can work through the Word document to finalize a recommendation to the full committee. Can everyone see my screen?
yes.
Okay. And
Now.
before we get started, there's a few pieces that I'm just finalizing with staff where I have draft language or we just have a few meetings this week, but those edits will be achieved and provided to the full committee when we send out a red line of this working Word document on Friday. So that way we can look at it with the full committee next Thursday at the meeting. So the first comment, I'm just going to go in order of the pages as defined in the report itself. The first comment was with regard to PFAS cleanup at the airport. I do have draft language I've worked through with Katie Service, and I've just asked DPW to finalize review of that language to make sure that they concur with how it's drafted. So that'll be incorporated within the red line to discuss with the full committee. Felicia, I did review the markup that you had provided when we obtained comments on the report. So I've incorporated some of the edits that you suggested for discussion this morning. So the first one was replacing in with on Cape Cod, if you and Fran concur with that minor edit.
Yeah, if you're not from here, you don't understand the ins and the ons. You live in a town or in a village, but you live on Cape Cod. So that's just the way it goes. So it's okay.
Amen.
Yeah.
All right. The next comment was a member of the public had asked that we talk about the importance of our salt marshes and also also incorporate the benefit of carbon sequestration earlier in the report. This is further defined later on, but they asked that it's such an important asset that it's mentioned earlier. And I think this is something that the subcommittee had already concurred to, unless there's any further comments on this edit.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
You go with that, Fran? Okay. Thank you.
All right. So moving on, the next
I had a comment that you didn't incorporate on page 10. Can we go back to 10? And I did not bring this up at the committee meeting, but yeah, no, the bottom of it, I think, is where it is. Let me see. Oh yeah, just before nitrogen and other threats to estuaries, the last paragraph at the top there. So it says the town is also working to map existing conditions and propose expansion areas, that paragraph. This is kind of a contradictory statement because I see that critical coastal habitat and proposed expansion
Yeah, right.
of mooring fields, public and private navigation channels, docks, piers, et cetera, water dependent uses. It's a contradictory statement because critical coastal habitat exists. But the more that we expand the human uses that we've described here, the harder it'll be for the coastal habitat
To survive.
that's so critical to exist. So I'm not sure what you know, when the town says they're working to map existing conditions and proposed expansion for critical coastal habitat, I understand that. But mooring fields, public and private navigation channels, docks and piers with the intent that water dependent uses will be allowed or limited based on this data. I'm not sure what this means. Do you guys have any more information you can fill us in on what this might represent? Sounds to me like they're looking to expand those human uses. But they're also expanding areas for critical coastal habitat. I don't understand how that happens at the same time.
I think that's what they are or the town is reviewing right now. How can they work together or not work together? Because it states towards the end there, with the intent that water dependent uses will be allowed or limited. So limiting potentially areas for additional moorings, as I know we've talked about prior, or we have a district for no piers and docks, for instance. So I believe this paragraph is meant to illustrate that we're the town looking at how it interacts and whether or not expanded areas are appropriate or areas where we need to further restrict as we've done in the past.
Okay, so the goal is to I understand they're trying to figure out the existing conditions part. I'm not sure how proposed expansion for areas of critical coastal habitat. So they're going to define ultimately, if this project comes to conclusion, they'll be looking to expand areas of critical coastal habitat. How do we do that? I don't think we can do that, can we?
No, again, I think that what they're doing is evaluating what is going on today and how to improve it in the future. So we can reword this paragraph to state something to the effect of the town is working to map existing conditions and how critical coastal habitat, mooring fields, public, work together, or yeah, we can think about how to word that for what the intent of that project is. I think ultimately what it is exactly as it's saying, though, that we are identifying what we have there and how they interact and whether we can expand certain uses or we need to remove certain uses or limit certain uses in the future.
Can it say the town is working to balance existing conditions and proposed expansion areas? I take out expand.
Yeah, I think balance is a really good word there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I like that too. I think on the last sentence, with the intent that water dependent uses will be allowed or limited based on this data.
Yeah.
I don't know, that's,
With the possible intent.
yeah, that's good, because this infers that a decision's already made about usages. And I don't think an existing conditions report, where if you're still mapping and trying to determine this, should kind of indicate that it's a, you know, it already exists. So it's under discovery right now, as you were talking about. So I think that's good, possible. Does that change anything, Frank?
I think it's fine.
You guys okay with it? Staff?
Yeah, no, I think that,
You good? Okay.
Yeah.
And before we leave this page, in the last paragraph there, development can be a major contributor of nitrogen to groundwater. I think we should just say is. I think
Is,
we're a long way away from
may.
wondering where the nitrogen is coming from in our groundwater and septic systems, et cetera. So I think we're not being heavy-handed by just saying development is. Are you guys okay with that?
I am.
Yeah, I think that makes sense as well.
Okay. I know it's picky, but the other one's a little benign. Thank you,
Thank-
Kate, for doing
of
that.
course.
All righty.
Anything further on page 10?
No, I'm done now. On page
No, I
10.
appreciate, we
Take a
appreciate all
while.
your time and review.
I don't have this on for every page, so it shouldn't be like that. Thank you.
Okay, didn't have anything. The next comment or edit I had was, excuse me, on page 13. This was with regard to the comment that talked about the use of the word sustainability. And when we looked at this paragraph, I believe that it was the consensus of the subcommittee that it doesn't really, it's more broad and doesn't really define anything related to marinas here in Barnstable, that it's very broad. And I believe our discussion led us to suggesting the removal of this paragraph.
I agree with your assessment of that. Yeah.
Okay.
This is a typo that I noticed. The latest dredge plan was adopted in 2017, and this language about it being updated should have been caught by staff and removed.
Okay.
Right. The next section was the offshore wind. I believe it was the subcommittee's intent to revise a lot of the language here. So the first being, instead of saying that the creation of offshore wind leasing areas meant the interconnection of the cables, we said it was suggested, sorry, to replace meant with may result in cables making landfall on Cape Cod.
Okay.
Rather
Do we
than
want to say Cape Cod, or do we want to say in
Barnstable.
town, in Barnstable?
I think we can be more specific to say Barnstable.
Yeah.
So that was the first edit. And then we talked about replacing this language with more broader language talking about the three phases as they stand today, with general location of where they're connecting to and tying into as far as infrastructure. So I'll leave this paragraph if you and Felicia and Fran, if you concur with this language.
I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think it well represents the position of where we are right now. Do we just want to state this and not state that anything about controversy around this? Do we want to acknowledge that, or do we not want to do that? I'm just asking an open-ended question to cover. I imagine there will be public comment about this at our next meeting, so I didn't know if we wanted to, I don't know that, I'm just making that up on my own, just assuming that.
I think it's staff recommendation to just state the facts since this is
state the
our
fact here.
existing conditions and it's a snapshot of where we're at right now without getting into too many details. But just defining the overall proposed project with the 3 different phases.
Okay,
But certainly I'll open it up to the subcommittee.
That's fine with me.
Okay. The next comment I had was on the location of the total number of ponds. I added these values up and summed the total defined in the table. I think it is accurate. There was a comment saying that the value was incorrect. We can certainly triple check that this value is correct.
yeah, I added it too, and it seemed right to me, so I wasn't sure what that was about.
Okay, next edit I have is on page 19. This was a suggestion about the location of the ponds rather than saying in Barnstable, to more specifically say the village that the ponds are located in.
You good with
That's
that, Fran?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay,
Okay. I didn't have any comments till the next one was on page 25. Did you have anything in between 19 and 25, Felicia, that I overlooked?
I had something on page 23, but
Okay.
I don't know if that's changed since you,
I don't think,
let's see here. Da, 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 da. My comment was, future sea level rise may cause town to update these. There was a statement about, yeah, about the wetlands protection regulations at the bottom. In the 100-foot buffer zone wetlands. I just didn't know if we wanted to give a nod to the fact that even though this is existing wetlands protection regulations, that we're aware that sea level, the potential for sea level rise may cause the town to have to update these regulations. I didn't know if the committee felt like you wanted to just kind of dab our toe in the water about that. It's a little weak language with the use of the word may, but think about that because as it reads now, it kind of says to me, yes, we have these in there, so we've done that. And I just didn't know if you wanted to leave the door open for the fact that perhaps during our phase 2 planning language, we'd want to look to commit the town to being open to modifying current regulations, the possibility of having to modify current regulations. It's not a direct order, it's just a possibility and being aware of the circumstance around this. Because the description in the paragraphs above this are very well done. It's just a question of here we are now, but we're also giving some thought to the future.
I'm still waiting for the sea levels to rise since whenever. So I
I'm
would
gonna
just,
call you next time Bismore Park and Ocean Street flood, okay? I got
Well,
pictures I could send you.
that's been happening all of the time.
No, it
Okay.
hasn't happened since I was a little kid out in the hurricane. My father tied me to his waist so I wouldn't fly away. That's the last time I remember seeing it. The water flood the parking lots and come over Ocean Street.
Right, but that's not a permanent situation. That's a temporary situation, right?
It is now, but I don't think so for the future, just saying.
Well,
But we could talk about that at another
Yeah.
time, so.
I'd just leave
Put
it.
it up for discussion, and if the whole committee doesn't like it, so we'll throw it out.
Yeah.
I'm open to that.
Okay, so for now,
Is that
just
okay?
leave a note and we can talk about it with the
Yeah.
full committee. Okay,
Yeah, future discussion.
okay. Anything else between 23 and 25?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
25. Jim and I met with Janet Milkman of Barnstable Land Trust and talked through some of her comments. One of her suggestions was to incorporate language about the benefits of open space, not just with diverse species, protection of drinking water, but to more broadly say that there's benefits for quality of life and social well-being. So this language, staff, we've drafted as a suggestion for the subcommittee to review if you feel that that's appropriate.
I agree with that,
Okay,
Me too.
especially since the people of Hyannis are asking for parks for their kids.
okay. The next edit is being finalized. We are going to take this protected open space, recreation land, open space and public land table. This was included within the 2018 open space and recreation plan. I'm working with GIS to finalize an updated version of these values, which will also be defined by village, because there were several comments about how much open space is allocated to each village. So I'll have an updated version of this table, but to send to the full committee. The language that I was considering suggesting to the subcommittee for your review, this is how it was drafted, formatted within the open space and regulation plan, describing this table. So saying of the overall acres, X is protected open space, X is public open space, recreation, or other public land. Oh, it should just be those two values. And then if we wanted to, the table will also have the values per village. So we're just finalizing, updating this table to make sure it's as up to date as possible.
I think this is a terrific update to the existing conditions, and it needs to be here. Good for you.
Okay.
I
I
had a
appreciate it.
comment in my original comments on page 25 about, isn't it sad that there's not one parcel in Hyannis was mentioned in the original thing, and referred to the open space and recreation plan, indicates that it's a priority for Hyannis. So this will cover that. So never mind my words, but
Okay.
it will be obvious.
Yep. So
when
we'll
the
have that table.
information-
Appreciate your patience, just finalizing that with
Yeah.
GIS later today, hopefully. Let's see, my next comment. Don't think is until page 31. Did you have anything between 25 and 31? Okay, thank you, Felicia. This was a comment that was included within the letter from Barnstable Land Trust. So this is on the section on chapter 61, which is, there's a quick summary. There's 3 programs that you can classify for potential property tax exemption. And as defined in the language that's already presented within the report, but Barnstable Land Trust had provided a comment seeking that we also mention that the town has the first right of refusal if land is to be converted from a non-chapter 61 use. So we have incorporated language that defines such.
That's good.
Yeah, good job.
Okay. I didn't have an edit until page 39. Anything between 31 and 39, Felicia?
No,
So this one was incredibly minor, but nonetheless important. The river, Skunknet River, was misspelled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So we have adjusted that. Let's see. I don't have anything until page 47. Do you have anything between 30?
I have one on page 42
Okay.
and another one on 45, couple on 45.
Okay, 42, and some of the
42.
pages sort of shifted when I added in language. I'm wondering if it maybe is it under the critical, maybe it falls on 43? Or we can keep scrolling down.
It was a minor change, and I might have to get back to you about it as to where it is, because I don't want to screw up my screen right now looking at other stuff. It was just change a can to will. It had to do with, I think there was a phrase someplace about development can. Let me see. I'll get back to you on this,
Okay,
Kate. Okay?
we can coordinate on that.
Yeah.
All right.
And the other one I had was, I'm just making myself a note here so I don't forget.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's fine. I can make a note as well.
Yeah, there was a thing about infrastructure on page 45. No, I don't see that. Maybe it's before this. There was verbiage about infrastructure. And I thought it talked about growth infrastructure. And I just thought we should add drinking water after the word infrastructure when we're talking about what got impacted, but I don't know. I'll get back to you on that too. Okay, and then we can just discuss it with the full committee.
Okay,
That makes sense?
yep. That sounds good to me. Okay, so we had a few edits on page 47. The first was defined within Heather Hunt's letter, talking about how there's language that mentions being consistent with the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan. And I believe it was discussed with the subcommittee that we would remove this language. And as a next step, we would, when we define our introduction for the local comprehensive plan as a whole, that we would incorporate language that defines that the plan is to be consistent with the Cape Cod Regional Policy Plan and the associated benefits, rather than having language here, which is specifically under land use and development. Let's pull it back and put it towards the introduction, if that sounds consistent.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
The next comment was with regard to so the sentence is evaluation of the need to protect, accommodate, or in extreme cases, retreat existing development will be a future planning challenge. One of the public comments was that extreme was, no pun intended, but an extreme choice of words. So we were saying maybe we say in some cases retreat existing development will be a future planning challenge, if that aligns with the discussion that you remember having, Felicia and Fran.
No, I thought when I read this that it reflected our discussion pretty well.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then during the discussion, I know that we had talked about potentially getting data on homes that have been condemned or have fallen based on erosion. I did reach out to our building department. We don't have any data for that specific value. However, the building, several inspectors have been with the town for 15 years or such, and they were not aware of any structures having been condemned or eroded, collapsed in Barnstable. So don't have a data point to provide for that. But what I did incorporate was some language about the Cape Cod Commission's recent efforts with the low-lying roads that reviewed vulnerable roadway segments and such. And then I referenced the top 5 roads that they identified as being of priority.
Okay, so I had a question about those roads. Are they talking Ocean Street or Ocean Avenue? Do you know? Is this the one near Highline, or is this the one over near C Street Beach?
This is Ocean Street near Highline.
Oh, okay. So there's no ocean. Oh, they didn't identify Ocean Avenue. I was very surprised at that.
Yeah, they did not. Not well. I'm not certain if they did or didn't, but it wasn't their top priority ways.
I can certainly send you a link to where all the information is. They may have included it, but it wasn't with, like Jim's mentioning, not in the top 5.
Okay. No, you indicated it's top 5. I just saw there was a photo in the paper the other day about the osprey nest, and they said it was on Ocean Street, and it wasn't. It was Ocean Avenue. So I just wanted to, people frequently make that mistake. So I just making sure that this is accurate. Okay.
Are we good with that language on the low-lying roads?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine.
In reviewing this section, when I was adding in that language, I felt that this sentence about also facing challenge with the nation's housing crisis, it felt a little out of place when we're talking more specifically about sea level rise and flooding. So present this edit to the subcommittee if we feel that this sentence could be removed.
I agree with that.
Yep.
And then the last bit of the last 2 sentences was a comment that we received from several members of the public, noting that it was subjective, talking about how Barnstable has a long history of sound land use policy to build upon. We've, and I believe the subcommittee concurred that that language was subjective as and did not align with the intent of an existing conditions report being data-based, and
Yes.
as such should be removed.
Correct.
Okay.
Good job here. A lot of work.
Appreciate everyone's time and feedback. It's really been great to work with everyone on this effort. The next edit, I believe, is on 52, unless you had anything between 47 and 52, Felicia.
Nope.
Okay. So we had a few edits on this page. I believe it's with regard to transportation. I believe the subcommittee sought to remove, this is language on transportation as mentioned, to remove the transfer stations and then to add in the ferries. And then the other edit that was discussed was in talking about the transportation center to mention how it broadly provides a local and regional bus services.
Yeah, so I have one question here also. We deleted transfer stations.
Wasn't last.
What about waste disposal facilities? I don't understand how that fits into transportation areas. Talk to me.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I don't understand it.
Or the last sentence, which says Barnstable is also to a large transfer station and recycling center for local use.
Yeah, I don't understand
go.
what it has to do with transportation either, but unless they're talking about the trash train. Yeah,
Yeah, I concur with you. And maybe if that language needs to be shifted elsewhere in the document, we can look at it comprehensively.
yeah.
Okay. Let's see. My next comment is on edit is on 56, unless anything between 52 and 56. And this is with regard to the multifamily unit permit table. Felicia, I know you had a comment on that, and I'm working to amend that.
Yeah, so the updated,
Yeah, so this data was what we had provided Barrett Planning Group when we were working on drafting the existing conditions a while back. It was probably in January or such. So I'm going to update this table with our current values and note that it's June 2023. So that way we have a snapshot of when it was captured. So I'll amend this table according to our values right now.
okay, that's fine. But the sentence below it also, I know the current one, which I have for housing values for the town, is dated like April 12th of this year.
Mhm.
And that doesn't show anything proposed at all. So proposed to me means pipeline. That would be what the pipeline would be. So that sentence under the table, you might want to look at that after you get
Okay.
the values in here updated, okay?
Yep,
Just
that's a great point.
make sure you look at that, because there wouldn't be a pipeline then. But what isn't in here is the completed projects, which I think you should add a row. I don't care whether it's separate or if it's part of this table, because final construction and or completion, 361 units isn't chump change. So I think it should be noted in there that we should also put the time period on here that the information reflects, because it's a 5-year time period, I believe. Might be
Yes.
6, it might be 6 now.
Yep,
So,
that's a great point.
yeah,
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, we will
Okay.
reform. I just crossed this out because we'll change the format
Yeah.
to be consistent with how we have it defined in
Right.
April with that final completion. And then we'll make sure it does capture, I think it's 2017 or 2018 on. So we'll make sure that it defines such
Okay.
to reflect. And we've received a few projects have come before site plan review since April. So I'm going to amend that table to be as accurate to today as possible.
Oh, great.
Update it online as well as incorporate it within this report.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think somewhere in here we should do a sentence also, because there's I'm not sure exactly where the language appears about how the town has a cap on building permits. So this talks about units, which isn't necessarily the same as a permit, right? Because you could have one permit with 200 units in it. So we should differentiate between the two and make sure that they know that this does say total units on it. So it does reflect units, but there should be a sentence in there that makes it very clear to the average person that permits could be multi-units, right?
Ye-
I think there's a couple of places where we say that the town has a cap on 96
Yeah.
building permits per year and 36 affordable units, I want to say. So, but it's
Yeah.
really not units, it's permits.
Yeah,
There's a
okay, we'll just have to look at the language in the ordinance, and see what it references.
maybe just address the fact, yeah. Because it's very easy for somebody to read that and say, oh my God, they can only build 96 units. No, that's not true. So anyway, go ahead.
Okay.
We don't need to belabor the point. I think you got it. Yeah.
Yep, I understand. And I've made note of such. Felicia, the next edit, which you had in your report, which I concur with, this should have been captured with the recent downtown Hyannis zoning districts. The Hyannis parking overlay district was removed, repealed. So as such, this language should be removed. I concurred with the edit that you had marked up.
Okay.
I think on page 60, unless you had anything between 58 and 60. And I can go slow. I can scroll through each page if it's helpful to see where we're at. This, you did have a comment on the SCROD that is still active.
It is. Okay.
Yep. So I did not incorporate that markup.
No, the only thing, let me see. Is the language on the GIS still to come? I'm all screwed up on pages now, so. Or did that already go by?
Here we go. Here's the guys.
No, so deal with your comment first then.
My comment's not till page
Oh, okay.
60.
Okay. Let me see. Yeah, I had a comment that I had done after the sentence, let me see, the intent is to encourage residential and commercial development and redevelopment in geographically defined economic centers supported by community amenities and appropriate infrastructure. I wanted to add the words "and away from sensitive environmental areas," because that is the whole point, is that you intensify the growth where you have the infrastructure and you don't push it where it's sensitive, so whatever verbiage you want to write on that. I mean, you can use your words versus mine, but that is the whole intent of the density versus offsets. That's a concept in planning, is it not?
Yes, yeah, we will, I think that language is fine, but I will certainly have my team review that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else in the GIS language?
Mm-mm.
Okay, and then with regard to the design and infrastructure plan, Felicia, I thought that your edit too, so the sentence is all development within the Hyannis Village zoning district shall comply. It says to the maximum extent possible with the design guidelines. I think it's fine to just say shall comply with the design guidelines.
You good with that, Fran?
Yes.
Okay,
And okay. As a note, they're no longer the Hyannis, it's the downtown downtown Hyannis zoning districts, but I'll make those markups before the
Okay.
full committee. It's minor, it's just the change, the
update the
title
language
change.
for that.
Yeah, so I'm going to highlight this for myself, but doesn't impact the intent of the language. Okay. The next comment was with regard to the section on water supply. So I have sent this whole section to our staff, to Hans Kaiser with our water supply division to review, to see if he had any suggested edits based on the public comment that we received, and in general this language. So he's working to get me any edits that he sees fit by the end of the week, so that it could be incorporated with the red line for the full subcommittee, or sorry, for the full committee. So
Great.
that's to come. My next edit was on page 65, unless there's anything
That's
between
good.
62 and 65. Okay. So here there was a comment, I think it was related to the total maximum daily load, TMDL, and specifically Barnstable Harbor and Rushy Marsh. So I coordinated with DPW to provide some elaboration on that language. So basically Barnstable Harbor and Rushy Marsh do not require a TMDL, and that's defined within their MEP reports, the Massachusetts Estuaries Project reports. And then someone had a comment on that statement, and so we've added in a little bit more technical language based on my correspondence with DPW.
Looks good.
That's fine.
Okay. The next comment is on page 68. Unless anything between 65 and 68. This was a comment we received from the public. They specifically asked, when talking about basically contamination and runoff, to specifically define pet and wildlife waste. And I think that the subcommittee was fine with incorporating the language shown on the screen, but certainly open it up for discussion.
That's fine.
Okay. My next edit is not until page 74. Anything between 68 and 74?
No, I had something on 74 too.
Okay,
I do
so
too.
this was
We all caught the redundancy.
regard to Route 28.
Yeah.
So we all felt that the language as written was a bit confusing. So some suggested edit to more clearly define what the statement is trying to say when it's mentioning that there's not two peak travels, but more consistent
Yeah.
morning commuter and remains consistent through typical evening peak. If the
Ron,
subcommittee concurs with this edit.
no, there is, there is peak morning and evening traffic, at least in Route 28 in Marston's Mills and Osterville. It's literally after 7 o'clock in the morning, coming from the west in Marston's Mills on 28, you can, it's just bumper to bumper, literally, and ditto at night. So I think that's incorrect.
So what you're saying is that there are two peaks of traffic.
Absolutely.
Because what this is saying is it starts in the morning and it just stays there all day.
No,
But you're saying, no, it's still,
not
goes up and
not year
down.
round. Maybe in the summer it stays the same, but not year round. You can just zip right into Hyannis after, say, 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. I can be in Hyannis in 10 minutes. I can't do that at 8 o'clock in the morning if I have a doctor's appointment in Hyannis and have to take the scenic route.
Perhaps we can extend this sentence to say, depending on your location in town, Route 28 is unique, and go on from there, because I think Fran is right for the majority of the year, but I would think in Hyannis, I know in Hyannis there isn't two peaks, it's all day.
always busy, right?
Yeah, and in certain areas along 28, it can vary. So maybe we just expand upon that.
Yeah, do we have to talk about traffic peaks, or can we start this whole thing at the next sentence? Where it says intense travel densities span Barnstable, Route 6, Route 28 year round. In the case of intense congestion, local connector roads, blah, blah, blah. Do we need to say that there's morning commuter traffic and evening commuter traffic, or why don't we just say that?
I concur with that suggestion.
I like that.
Fran, how do you?
You know,
I certainly, the morning and evening traffic is just recent, recently, in the recent years, just exploded in my mind. But
Of all those stop signs that do it, Fran.
yeah, no, don't even talk to me about stuff.
I know, I'm with you.
Good. Yeah, so I mean, if you want to take it out, fine, but it's inaccurate to say that there's consistent, on Route 28, all of it.
Okay. I think that makes sense, unless any further discussion. The next edit I have is on page 78, anything between 74 and 78. Okay. And
there was
this,
can you go back for,
Sure.
I'll have to find the, there was just a redundant phrase under, before this. Your page numbers have changed, so it's hard to figure out where it is. So I'll just tell you where it is.
Okay.
I'll figure it out and get back to you, okay?
Thank you. Okay. The next edit was where it was talking about, it says Barnstable instead of Hyannis, and mentioning and talking about the ferries. So it should, I think we all concurred with replacing Barnstable with Hyannis, removing the language about the High Line being licensed of the steamship. And then Felicia, I think you had crossed out this sentence,
Right.
but want to open, I think we all discussed these edits at prior meetings, but just wanted an opportunity to talk through removing this sentence.
No, I think this makes it a lot more accurate. There's no ferry service from Barnstable Harbor that I know of, just whale watch, right?
Just whale watching.
Yeah,
All right, if we're good with those edits, Felicia, I think you had suggested in this sentence, it states recent trends show that despite the express service offered between Cape Cod and Nantucket, the accessibility, you're suggesting adding frequency and lower price point of the regular ferry travel is a difficult competition. Fran, do you concur? Are you
Yes.
okay?
Especially now when the steamship authority doesn't have enough staff.
Didn't have any opposition to that. The next edit I have is on page 88, page 80 about the Cape Cod Rail Trail, unless
No,
anything
that's good.
between, okay. One of the comments that we received, it was more of a question than a comment, was asking about the status of the rail trail. So I've worked with DPW to add language on the two phases, the two-phased approach to come through from Yarmouth to Barnstable to the Stanwich line, which I work closely with DPW to make sure that this language is accurate. And then I thought it might be beneficial, since we have the map of phase 4, to also add in the map of phase 3. So when you're talking about where it's proposed to be located, you have a visual reference. But this is the language suggested, and open it up to the subcommittee.
No, I read this. I thought it was very
Yeah.
well done.
I agree. I read it also. It's fine.
Okay, my next edit is on page 85 with regard to the libraries, unless there's anything between 80 and 85.
Nope.
Okay, this was a minor edit that we discussed, at earlier meeting, just noting about the funding for each library in the form of grants, and this is from our 2024 operating budget. And we've had the report actually talked about an average fraction of the cost, but I think we talked about just more generically stating a portion of the library's operating funds, if the committee concurs.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, nice. The next comment I have is on page 96. Anything between 85 and 96?
Nope.
Okay, this was with regard to archaeological sites in Barnstable. Oh, I apologize. One edit in between there. One of the comments was with regard to telecommunications, and we talked about how Barnstable we're lacking, the broadband service infrastructure is lacking. Trying not to be subjective in this existing conditions report, I did my best to try to find any data that we could point to more accurately make a statement as such, but I couldn't really find, I couldn't find any data. Right now it says Comcast remains the most pervasive vendor for these needs with the highest internet speeds available. Without having data, I'm a little bit hesitant to say that, to make a sentence saying that it's lacking, unless there's any further discussion or suggestion of how to approach that. I understand the intent of language, but really trying to be data specific in this report.
Yeah, maybe remains the most pervasive vendor for these needs.
Most
Without-
common,
What?
most common.
Well,
Most-
it basically has no competition. You know, it's a monopoly right now, but I
Right.
don't think we want to be aggressive and use that word.
Yeah,
Um,
pervasive is
Yeah, and it has an effective monopoly, but I don't think it has like a complete one, in that there are other options if you really want to bend over backwards to try to get them. But yeah, they are essentially a monopoly.
So what are the other options? I mean, you can't get Open Cape
I think
unless
you
you
can get-
have
you can
numbers
get,
in
like-
your whole neighborhood.
Yeah, you can get like T-Mobile, I think. I think there are other options. It's just they're not good ones.
Well, you can get T-Mobile for your phone service, but you can't get it for internet in your house, can
I
you?
think you might be able to. I don't quote me on that though.
I don't think so.
it was just Verizon.
And Verizon won't come down, yeah.
No, Verizon's here.
Oh, there, okay, so I'm really not knowledgeable on the topic. Let me retreat.
Verizon has internet service? I don't think so.
Yeah, they do.
They
It's
do.
just the
They do.
DSL. It's not the high speed internet.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
But apologize. I think maybe if this could be, we take this comment and apply it as we work to develop goals in phase 2, that might be the best approach, since there's not really data to find something more
yeah,
specific.
I think we could just
if
say
that's
that, that the town could benefit from additional, we can say Comcast remains the most pervasive, but we could say the town could benefit from other options or additional carriers, or however you want to say that. I think we just kind of very politely put something in there, because basically they do have a monopoly at this point. Verizon's not making any investment in their infrastructure here, as far as I know. So anyway,
Okay.
just
All right.
leave it in there so it gives us room,
Yep, I think that's fine. So the next section, next edit, was with regard to the archaeological sites. Let's see, on page 96. There was a comment saying, so basically the language as it was written referenced the 2010 LCP, which I believe referenced our 2010 preservation plan. And so the comment was looking for more current data. So I did reach out to MHC on this comment. You have to have an account to be able to log in to obtain archaeological site values. So I couldn't do it on my own, but MHC provided me with the language that I've added here. So it's a little bit, it's as current as possible that I was able to obtain.
good for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay. The next comment was with regard to historic demolition. So I coordinated internally to figure out the best way to capture this value. And so what I've worked on and just finishing up with staff's help is defining the total number of demolition applications which were approved that came before our 3 historic board committee commissions, being Barnstable Historical Commission, Old Kings Highway, and the Hyannis Main Street and Waterfront Historic District Commission. So that way you could see a value for demolition application. So we're finishing up this table. It'll be prepared to send to the full committee, and then just looking to add a value for the total amount of demolitions.
So in looking at this chart, I'm just curious about the Hyannis Main Street and Waterfront column there, where those, the McAvoy properties, where Sea Captain's Row is now. Was that back in 2017? No, I don't think, was that far long ago, or was it since then?
I'd have to look on that value specifically. I know we're missing a few of the more recent years. I can follow up on that.
Yeah, that just doesn't look accurate to me, that's all. So, and maybe they didn't approve that, maybe it came from another resource, I don't really know. Maybe town council did.
Yeah, let me look into that for you.
Okay,
The, just so you know, the Historical Commission is working on a reporting and or a bylaw change to have some authority over demolition by neglect, where people just let the buildings fall down. That's been with the lawyers for about a year.
But I think this is the best way to capture some data to incorporate within
Yeah.
this
no,
report.
I think it's great that it's
Um,
gonna be in here, because it's never appeared before, so that's a giant step in the right direction.
Yeah, because I did reach out to our building department, but their data is most current within the last few years. And then if we added buildings 75 years or older, it wouldn't specifically mean it could be a property that has a building that's 75 years or older, but a newer structure was demolished. So this is the most accurate way to capture demolition. So we'll have this table completed for the full committee meeting.
Great.
So let me see. Oh, page 102 was the next. So this is with regard to population. I looked back over my notes and I think it was requested at one of the prior meetings to provide a value for the amount of vacationers that visit Barnstable. Reached out to the chamber as well as the Cape Cod Commission to see if we have any data on such. So if I can obtain any data on the amount of how the population increases during the summer tourist season, I will certainly incorporate it for the full committee's review. I'm just working to see if we can get any data on that.
Okay.
And then
They have it countywide. I'm not sure they keep it on a town by town basis, but should be able to get that from room taxes or something, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, I can.
Good for you.
Yeah, I'll reach out. I'll see if I can. I'll do my due diligence. Certainly acknowledge that it was a comment. And if I can find any data, I will relay that to the full committee next week. And then my next edit was on page 123. Did you have, since that's a big jump, anything between? Okay. To not make everyone dizzy, I'm just going to scroll through these as fast as possible. So this was a comment on this section, talks about our website, Business Barnstable, and I believe there was a comment seeking some data related to that resource. So I've added language from recent data talking about how many visitors are on that website. And then we do have an emailed newsletter with more than 1,000 subscribers. So adding some data related to Business Barnstable.
I think some of the, Kate, some of the public comments on this also wanted to know if there were actual successes and where somebody could say, hey, they came through the website, but they actually did 2 years later, they did move their business here, that kind of a thing. Do we have any data on that, or we don't know?
I certainly ask, but I'm not sure if we would have any specific data that I could include.
Unless,
yeah.
Yeah.
But this captures, that we have a good amount of visitors and that we have a lot of people signed up to the newsletter. So hopefully that's sufficient to add to the value of the importance of this webpage. Okay. The next edit was on page 126. This is with regard to second homes and short-term rentals, unless you had anything between.
nope.
Okay. All right, so I coordinated with our assessing department to obtain the most current value for the amount of housing units in Barnstable. So that's the 23,676 units. That does exclude apartment units as defined within the language. So that's the overall housing units. And then what we've included in here is data related to properties who receive residential exemption, and then took the remaining properties that don't receive that residential exemption to figure out a percentage of homes that are not occupied by year-round owners, which could be as high as roughly 51%. It's a little difficult to define that that's second home owners because maybe someone just hasn't sought the residential exemption, but I think this is the most accurate way to capture data related to housing units and an idea of how many are potentially year-round.
Wow,
That seems really high.
51%.
Yeah.
I think this is the best way to capture this data based on what our assessing department has.
I don't really have suggestions as to alternatives of how you would capture the data. I know that the commission did a housing survey a couple years ago, and they asked people if they were year-round or seasonal. They might have something county-wide. I don't think they would have it town by town.
Okay, I can always reach out to the commission to see. I can look
It's
into
not
that.
surprising that Barnstable County is a lot higher than the state,
Mhm.
clearly. But that is a big number, and it's pretty stunning, isn't it?
Mhm.
They could look at, if you go on the, you know, the property list on the town, you know, a lot of the second homes, you know, you can see that their mailing address is not Barnstable. So I don't know how, I don't think there's any way to cull that out of the list.
Yeah,
To do a
Inc-
you mean to do a database search where you said, you know, that mailing address outside of these zip codes, any other zip code or something like that, or just get a list by zip codes, and maybe you could figure that out, because you know what the town zip codes are. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
and certainly reach out to assessing, but I know that this was
Yeah.
in talking with assessing the most accurate way to define
No
a
kidding.
percentage.
That is stunning, though.
Yeah.
Kind of explains a lot about the housing crisis too, doesn't it? Between that and then you add short-term rentals onto that. Oh my God. Yikes.
Yeah.
So the next section, if we're good with this language, was on short-term rentals. I coordinated with our building department. So we have host compliance, which tracks active listings online. To be as accurate as possible, I received a value for May, the amount of short-term rentals, and then I divided that by the amount of the housing units that we received from assessing, and that calculated 3.5% of the housing. And then building was able to provide me with a value for the amount of short-term rentals last August. I felt with summer being the peak, it'd be appropriate to incorporate a summer value. And then they also had a value last July that provided me with the numbers per village to provide a capture of roughly the percentage of short-term rentals in each of our villages,
Good for
to
you.
provide some data on short-term rentals.
This is great that this is in here.
Okay.
Should we mention anything in here? This is just information on housing though. So we don't want to mention anything here about the tax money received, you know, or how much, what value. No, let's not muddy the waters.
Okay.
That
The
could be
next-
phase 2.
I think
Yeah.
818 seems low. I suspect there are more out there that just aren't registered.
And they pull data. We use a separate consultant to pull data from all of the websites, Airbnb and such. And so it's as accurate as we can get the value to be.
But I'm sure some of them are just word of mouth or ads in the paper.
Yeah, and it's hard to. That's why we caveat, approximately pulling the as most accurate data as we can. Okay, the next comment was on page 129. And this was with regard to the distribution of unit size and household size. I think we all concurred that the way that it was written was a little bit subjective in saying defining that there's a mismatch between the number of people living in a home and number of bedrooms. So provided some suggested language to remove the subjective link, to remove how it was defined more subjectively, to say on average, Barnstable homes currently have more bedrooms than the number of people living within the homes, keeping the statistic being an estimated 68% of Barnstable homes are 1 or 2 people, and 69% of the town's homes have at least 3 bedrooms, removing the subjective statement saying that there's a specific need for studios, 1 and 2 bedroom options, but just stating the facts.
That's good.
Okay. And that was the last edit I had in here. Besides, there was a comment on some of the maps. I did reach out to Barrett Planning Group. They have one of the maps included twice in I think the natural and the built system section, but it was their intent to include it when referencing to that specific chapter. And then there was a zoning map that there is a comment that it needed to be updated. So Barrett Planning Group has worked with our GIS to update that map.
Good.
Did you have anything else, Felicia, from page 130 on?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I was just wondering about the maps.
Yep.
As opposed to putting them all at the end. I think the maps would make more of an impact for people if it was at, if they're maps on specific topics like the rail trail, bike trail, if that map was with that discussion. Because it doesn't even, no, I don't think everybody's necessarily gonna go so, they might only be interested in specific sections of the report. So they're not necessarily gonna go to the last page or the appendix page to look at what's in the appendix.
Yeah, why don't we bring that up for our full committee discussion and see for formatting at the end, okay? And
Okay.
see how people feel about that. It's a totally valid point. After each section, the maps could be divided up to be wherever they relate. So see how people feel about that.
Yeah, I think that that's an appropriate suggestion to discuss. I'll add it in.
Thank you.
Also thinking in the future, there's a lot of times just the report itself, the written language is online, and then the appendix for some reason falls off, and it's not there for people for reference, 10, 12, 15 years from now. So maybe including them in the report would prevent that too. So, but we
Okay.
could have
Yeah,
that
that's-
discussion then.
That's a great point. I think the only other comments, so we talked about this at one of the earlier meetings, and I apologize, we've gone over 10 o'clock and I forgot to note such.
Don't worry about it.
Just dove right in and wasn't looking at the clock. We talked about the language on Hyannis history, and I think if we wanted to do that for each of the villages, that would be, we can certainly talk about that with the full committee, but that would be a separate effort. If we wanted to have language added for history for each of the villages, a separate effort from this existing conditions report. So we can certainly talk about it, but not associated with trying to finalize this existing conditions report.
I agree. It's a good discussion to have.
Yeah.
I can add it as a discussion point. And then the other comments were more of questions that we had discussed, being like gray water and lot coverage, some that we already do achieve within our current zoning, but could be discussed further with phase 2. So we did talk about keeping all of these comments and reflecting on them as we work through goals for phase 2. And then the other comments we've, provided, all of the comments were gathered and posted online for the public's review. And this red line that we worked through today was posted online. And once I've finalized these edits, will also be posted online for the public to see as well, and for the full committee's discussion next Thursday. So I think we're in really good shape, unless there was any other comments or edits that I overlooked.
No, I think you did a great job responding to our conversations. I'd like to suggest that you give the committee the link to this maybe at least 4 days before, as a reminder, because it might take some time. I mean, we will go through it page by page, but at least give people the heads up so they have time if they have, to go through it and they can familiarize themselves.
Yes, yep.
Fran, do you have further comments?
Nope, I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, so what I'm going to do is finalize this document. There's a few pieces, like I said, the OSRP, that data chart that I'm updating, and a few language pieces that I'm just coordinating with staff. So my objective is to capture those within the version that I'll send to the full committee on Friday. So that way everyone has the weekend to review this. But if not, I would certainly point out any final tweaks that are coordinated in between Friday and next Thursday for the full committee's discussion.
Yeah, and I'm going to get back to, there's like 3
Okay,
comments. I wasn't sure where the pages were, but I'll get back
Okay.
to, and I can CC those comments to the subcommittee members too, so they can, if they want to, know that stuff. Okay?
Okay. I
Great.
think that's it, unless anything further. As always, really do appreciate your time to work through this together.
Yeah. Thank you for all the effort you put into this.
Second that.
Anybody else wants to add to the meeting before we move to adjourn? Nada? All right, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Roll call.
moved.
Second,
Fran Parks, yes.
Felicia Penn, yes. Meeting adjourned.